So we're coming into our last stop, and Jim Hedges will never short you on any type of high level, really getting excited about growing corn. So coming into this wide drop undercover spot, we're going to talk about timing and placement, okay? Whenever we do anything, there's a right time to do it, right? There's always 1 or 2 days throughout the growing season that you don't want to plant. Okay, when we time that nitrogen better, we think about our uptake curve, we think about our sulfur availability. In addition, just as Jim talked about, our zinc and boron timing as well. There's a time for everything. And when it comes to uptake, we really got to make sure that we're hitting this timing, we're hitting this placement of where across that row we're making that application.
This is the last stop. It's timing and placement. And this is really about how do I max out the efficiency of my nitrogen, of my yield, and of my plant health program? So wide drop and undercover are a big component in that. So my name's Jim Hedges. I direct the sales at 360 Yield Center. I'm an agronomist by training, and I also farm about 90 miles south of here. So we do a lot of this systems approach on our own farm, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is a slide I use. If you've ever seen me present, I use it because it tells a great story. It tells the story of when we think differently about how we approach nitrogen management as well as plant health management, we can increase output, we can be super efficient on our input, and we can start getting ourselves ready for the inevitability of regulation. So what you see here is those strips. If Lucas will pulling them out as well, that's 100 bushel variance from one grid to the other grid. So you're seeing over 100 bushel of difference from one end of the field to the other. My dad used to say that's just the way it is. And the challenge to all of us is just because that's the way it's always been doesn't mean that's the way it has to be. So that strip had 170 pounds fall-applied anhydrous with an inhibitor, followed up with about 40 pounds of weed and feed. This is corn on corn. And the thing is, I hit my yield goal. So it was 2014. We had a really great year. I hit 220. Should I be happy with that? And the answer is absolutely not. Not when I can use the same amount of nitrogen and increase that yield by over 40 bushel right next to it. So our biggest opportunity to increase overall field average is to go into where you see those red and yellow strips and pull those up. Pull that valley of yield up to where the peak is. And then we get that dramatic yield increase. So Greg talked a little bit about this. For me, when I think about nitrogen use efficiency, I always try to shoot for 0.7 pounds applied per bushel. Now, that doesn't mean I'm ever going to get there. If mineralization's really good on my higher organic matter soils, I can achieve that. If I have a lot of challenge through rain, denitrification, leaching, there's no way I can get there. But that's where I want to start, and then I want to adjust and change based on what the environment gives me and based on the measurements I take with tools like soil scan on what's left and how much do I need to finish the race. So for me, it's not about saving money on the nitrogen. It's about taking the nitrogen budget that I already have and producing a lot more with it. And this isn't a conceptual idea. I mean, the slide shows that not only can it be done, it is being done, and it's pretty exciting stuff. This is another slide that you'll always see when I give a presentation. And I love it because it's a slide that talks about when corn is hungry. So if you look at this and think about my old program where I'm doing everything before I ever even plant the crop. So what do I know about the weather, commodity price, and those types of things pre-plant, especially if I'm doing it in the fall? I don't know a whole lot, so I'm taking a lot of assumptions in. If I'm going out at V2 and I'm doing a side dress application versus going in at V10, what do I know? Well, I can tell you what I can gain by a V10 application. I gain 8 leaf stages of knowledge. Knowledge about how much rain I've had or I haven't had. Knowledge about where that commodity price is at. Has it tanked a buck like it did this year, or did it actually go up? Knowledge about what my subsoil moisture looks like. Knowledge about what the forecast looks like. And all that knowledge that I can take and apply helps me make a much more informed decision. That V10 corn is about this tall. It's only used 25% of its nitrogen. So I want to wait as late as I can to make that type of decision. The second thing that's really, really important about the timing of my nitrogen application is how the hybrids have evolved. So I was in the seed industry for 27 years, and I've seen a lot of change. And the genetic potential of the hybrids that are planted out here and the hybrids we all plant on our farms is incredible. When you talk to breeders, and it doesn't matter if you're talking to a DuPont breeder, a Monsanto breeder, Syngenta, AgriLiant, they're going to tell you that that bag, before you pop it open, has got over 700 bushel per acre potential in it. And it does. But we aren't maxing it out. And one of the reasons is, as those hybrids have changed with the incorporation of exotic germplasm into U.S.-based germplasm, we've changed when that corn plant is using nitrogen. And that's what this slide shows. If you look at the yellow, that's Purdue data, and it's showing that the hybrids of today actually use 40% more nitrogen post-tassel than the hybrids of 2 decades ago. So the likelihood of me using the same system from 2 years ago, or 20 years ago and having very good results now are slim, because we're going to run out, and we're going to run out in that red area of that chart. And that's grain fill. So what I want to do is I want to maximize the number of kernels I've got on that ear. So maximize my rounds, maximize my length, and then my next job is I've got to maximize the depth and the weight of those kernels. I always talk about manipulating the denominator of the yield equation. I don't want it to take 90,000 kernels to make a bushel. I want it to take 80 or 75,000, and that's what we'll talk about. So this is some ears of corn from a trial on my farm, and you can see that they're pulling back significantly, and that is nitrogen deficiency. So this is about 95 pounds of nitrogen applied with a planter on a 2x2x2 system. And I don't know, we got, they're laying right here. I mean, actually, they look pretty good. So you can tell we've had some mineralization, and you can tell that the placement has helped. So for 95 pounds, I'm not too disturbed by it until I look at the ears that only have 170 pounds on it, and you can see I've got significant yield gain over here. And I'm going to maintain that really low nitrogen use efficiency. So I want to keep that crop, I want to feed that so I never lose that type of ear fill. And the way we do it is through the engineering that these guys have come up with. So they're always continually trying to improve the placement of that nitrogen. And this is actually a test field that they run over and over again. And you can see, if you watch this video, the arms will change. So they're looking at different angles, different positions of the arms, and how that affects the actual placement. So when we go out and we demo this, I call it the Wheel of Fortune effect. That application is basically bumping against every stalk and applying kind of around it. It almost looks like a chaining effect around the stalk or a figure 8 around the stalk. And that's extremely important because we want to use the physiology of that corn plant to incorporate that nitrogen into the soil. So corn is a really greedy, droughty type of plant. Its leaves are structured in a way that it's going to grab every drop of moisture, whether it's dew or rainfall, and funnel that down to the stalk base. So over on the left side, you're seeing stem water produced by a heavy dew. On the right side, that's actually a picture taken after 1/10 of an inch of rain about 6 hours later. And you can see I still have about a 7-inch muddy strip, which has incorporated that nitrogen down 2 to 3 inches. So I'm immediately getting that nitrogen down into the sweet spot. So you look at that root system, where are the mass of the roots at? They're right near the stalk, right? They're not out in the middle. So it's intuitive that the closer I get to the stalk, the more root mass I have. The more root mass I have, the more interception of that nitrogen I'm going to get. So placement's absolutely critical in getting to the mass of the root system, and then placement's also critical because we have to think about how nitrogen actually moves. So the picture on the left, or the date on the left, is actually a field out in Iowa. So you can see there's a 0 and a 30. So 0 is one row of the corn. The 30 is the other row of corn. And they've done a 150-pound nitrogen application in the center of the row. 5 weeks later, we come out with soil scan, pull nitrates. And here's the really interesting thing. I have to get 12 inches away from that row before I come to any appreciable concentration of nitrogen. So if I'm thinking about that root system being where that 30 is, so the stalk's right where that 30 is, what percent of my roots are over in that hot spot versus what percentage are over here where there is no nitrogen? So my takeaway from this is nitrogen does not wash tub out. It moves vertical. That's demonstrated here. So it's just, once again, intuitive to move that application as close to that stalk as I can because I'm going to get to that massive root system. That's how we're going to get not only the output gain, but the efficiency gain as well. This is Oklahoma State data. Dr. Bilo at the University of Illinois would probably even state this. He probably would say this is even understated, but basically 2/3 of your nitrogen supply comes from within 7 inches of the stalk. So it's not just me saying it. We have our own data. There's others in the industry that agree with it, but also academics do too. Stephanie, I'm going to let you talk about this next slide. This is actually data that Stephanie came up with, and I think it tells this story to a T, so I'll let you speak to it.
Sure. So at home, what our nitrogen program is early season is that we will put on about 75 units of nitrogen via weed and feed. Okay, weed and feed are broadcast AMS. So essentially, we're in 30-inch rows at home. We broadcast evenly across this field. So what I wanted to do this year was track right in the row, so 0 inches away from a corn stalk, right in between plants, versus 15 inches away, so right in the middle of our corn rows. So if you note there, in May, we turn the calendar to June, we're just starting up that nitrification process. We're taking that ammonium ion, we're making nitrate. But what you start to see in the beginning of June is that blue line, so 0 inches away from the plant, we see that line significantly start to taper off. Whereas at 15 inches away from that plant, I would pretty much call that a dead straight line. So what's happening here, right? So at 15 inches away, my nitrogen is held by my CEC. I am not changing a thing. But right in row, 0 inches away from that stalk, I'm seeing a dramatic decline in my soil nitrate. So where'd it go? It went into my plant. Okay, when you think about that plant early season, it's a mirror image. Everything you see above ground is exactly what is below ground. So when I'm at a V4, V6 plant, I have leaves that come out about 6 inches, right? Okay, our root ball. I'm not even getting to that 15-inch band to where that nitrogen is at. So right in row, I'm seeing that taper off, and you can see my Y drop application there. It was actually on the 5th of July. Okay, again, if you take a look at that yellow or orange line, we go from about 12 parts per million to 10. I'm still flatlined when I'm at R2 corn. It's not pulling that nitrogen at 15 inches away from the row. It's pulling it right next to that corn plant.
So, I mean, to me, that just tells the whole story. That was data that you collected, basically weekly nitrates with soil scan, right? Okay. Last year, we had really tremendous results with this systems approach. So across the U.S. in 560 tests, multiple trials, we had a 13.8 bushel advantage. But what was really rewarding, I think, to us was we saw at least a 12 bushel advantage in every single region of our 7 regions. So in Iowa and Minnesota, we had over 12 bushel responses where conditions were ideal. In your region where you had a lot of challenges from heavy rainfall, we saw probably a more significant yield increase. And in areas where it was dry, we saw over that 12 bushel increase. So my point is, across environments, this system works very well because of that placement and that timing. So if I've eliminated nitrogen as my limiting factor, now what I want to do is I want to try to manipulate plant health. If I can get 6 extra days of grain fill, what am I going to do? I'm going to take advantage of the physiology of the corn plant again. I'm going to grab all that sunlight, I'm going to turn it into carbohydrates, and I'm going to cram those carbohydrates into that ear and get that heavier, denser kernel that I've been talking about. This is data from BASF. It's really interesting because over on the left-hand side where it shows nitrogen loss, what kind of response did they get from the fungicide? 0 bushel. Is that because the fungicide didn't work? No, it's because plant health wasn't the issue. Nitrogen was the issue. When we move over to the right, where they eliminated nitrogen as a limiting issue, we're we're seeing 11.5 bushel response. And that's with traditional application methodology. Where I believe we can go is increase that 11.5. We can get magnification because we're going to apply it in a way where we get it on both the top and the bottom of the leaf, and we're going to protect the entire factory. That's what we have to do. So this is the ear on the left was taken 10 days ago, and you can see we have filled that thing all the way to the tip. And you can see the kernel size is very significant. Over on the right, it's a different field, but you can see the same thing. So nitrogen, we've controlled the nitrogen. Now, through plant health, I've been able to really start to fill those things. So I'm going to manipulate that denominator. And the way I do it is by protecting that whole factory. So if I were to ask Stephanie what is the most important leaf when it comes to yield, she would say
The ear leaf.
She would say the ear leaf. And the ear leaf is a sink. It's a direct connection to that ear. It's going to jam those carbohydrates in there. So why the heck do we want to wait till the ear leaf has gray leaf spot on it to do application? We've got to protect that ear leaf. So with the undercover system, I can protect from the ear leaf or even below all the way into the upper canopy. On the right-hand side, I agree, the ear leaf is. And look at it. It's beautiful. So when we look at treated versus untreated, and I think about the summer we've been through, we had basically zero rainfall in June, and I heard over and over again there's going to be no disease pressure. Well, the disease triangle was there. We had the causal agent, so the inoculum was there. We had the susceptible crop corn, and we had an early season that definitely was promotable to gray leaf spot. So why, again, do I want to wait for it to establish up into my moneymaker, into my factory? Here's some shots I took about that same 10 days ago. Look at the lower canopy. It's absolutely filthy with gray leaf spot. Now, out in the field, is that really significant? No, but it is if I get up to the ear leaf. So on the left, from an agronomist standpoint, you can see the ear and you can see the leaf. That's just the thing of beauty. I mean, that's about as clean as it gets. Over on the right, that's the untreated check, and look at how much gray leaf spot lesions I have in that canopy. So what's not occurring everywhere one of those lesions is at? Photosynthesis is not occurring. And so I'm not running my factory efficiently at all. One of the other things that we can think about is other crops. So I think we have significant opportunities in soybeans. You see over here, we're doing work in cotton. We're doing work in sunflowers with both wide drop and undercover, as well as pretty much every specialty crop. What you were going to see, what you are going to see, okay, this is the top. So this is the top of that canopy sprayed with the undercover. So I have absolutely no lesions there. Look at the lesions in the top. So once again, this factory is running far from 100%. So I'm not going to have that effect on the denominator of yield that I am where I did the undercover application. I think we're just about out of. Okay, so this is, I mentioned soybeans. So go back one, please. So in soybeans, same basic concept. What do I want to do? I want to pack my internodes as tight as I can. I can do that through population and early fertility. I want to get as many pods per node, and then I want to get as many beans per pod, and I want to get as big a bean per pod as well. So what you can see here is through manipulation of the plant health at that R2 to R4 stage, we're getting really nice pod counts around that internode. So the middle one is 6. And what I'm really excited about, because this plant is so healthy, look at where my thumb is at the top of the picture on the right-hand side. So this is obviously just bloomed, and look at all the possible potting sites. By keeping that plant healthy, I'm going to hold on to a whole bunch of those potting sites that I probably would have lost if that crop was under any type of stress. Okay. Let's go ahead to the next. From a coverage standpoint, the way we're going to do that, coverage is absolutely critical. We can hand these out. So this is a trial that we did in Indiana. It's a dealer of ours, Brewer Farms. And what they're looking at is how does standard over-the-top application in soybeans compare to undercover application in soybeans? So looking at the left-hand picture, that is water-sensitive litmus paper. So anytime you get a droplet of water on it, it turns purple. So the left-hand side, you can see 12 inches down on the stem. What type of coverage do we have? Not very good, right? 12 inches down with the litmus paper stapled to the top of the leaf. What's my coverage look like? Not very good. And then on the bottom side of the leaf, there's absolutely not one purple speck on there. So I've been talking a lot about plant health and fungicide, but plant health is also affected by things like insects. Anybody ever have soybean aphids or spider mites? Where do they live? They live down in that canopy and both sides of the leaf, but a lot of times they're on the bottom side of the leaf. I'm not going to get a good kill, or I'm not going to get as good a kill with that as I am with the next slide. So this is undercover. So on the left-hand side, that's 12 inches down on the stem, and that's just crazy type of coverage. What I love about that is if you think about diseases like white mold, where we have to get down into the stem and hit the flowering spots, I'm going to get awesome coverage with that. And we've had some very good results with white mold control. In the middle, the top of the leaf, excellent coverage. And then on the right-hand side, bottom side of the leaf, it's not as good as the top, but it's still very good. So the coverage is going to be critical no matter what crop that we go in, no matter what disease, pest, or nutrient deficiency we're looking at. That was, I believe, 15 gallon per acre. And what you're going to see out here is 17 gallons per acre. I actually use 12 gallons per acre. Our agronomists are going to tell you to use 15 to 20 gallons per acre. I'm a farmer agronomist, so I'm going to push it to the limit. I don't want to give up coverage, but I also want to get over as many acres on a fill as I can. How much product were they using here? This was, that was Preaxor, and it would have been labeled rate. So we are not looking at decreasing labeled rate on these things. We're just looking at getting more coverage and uptake. So if I get more up into the plant, I'm going to get better efficacy, and if I get better efficacy, I'm going to get better performance out of said product.
You guys using straight water, or are you guys throwing in an adjuvant as well?
Both. I mean, so we look at both sides. I think in corn, the more coverage I get, the better. If we can throw an adjuvant in there, and we're on label, I think you can look at that. There's other people who say I don't need it now, but I would not say that we want to eliminate that at all. How are we doing on time? Nah, we're all right. It's been a short day for y'all. All right, let's go. So the question was, once I do an application, how long do I have? No, we do both. So no, you can do one application. So so what we have done is we've worked on, and I'll talk about it when we get out here and do the actual demos, but we have done V8 to V12 applications, and we work with BASF pretty closely. But, I mean, there's lots of products you can use with Preaxor, and what we're trying to do is stop it from ever getting established in the canopy and moving up, and that seems to work pretty good. The other thing, if we don't see the disease, we'll wait till VT, and all those pictures that you saw that I showed in that corn, that was all a VT application. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a wide drop application. This corn is actually probably staged about V14. So we're going to tell you can have a V4 to V12 application window. But you can see this case, this is the 5th time, well actually it's probably about the 7th or 8th because we practiced a little bit, that we've been through this corn, and we're not causing any crop damage at all. You can see down here, we're getting that Wheel of Fortune effect. We're going to do a side dress application over there where you can see it much clearer because the corn is smaller. When you come back to your question, this would be probably the last we would be doing a Preaxor application. So we can go out at V8, and then if we don't see any more disease come in, we're done. And we had some really good results with that a year ago. If we do see disease come in, then we can do another application. But if you're looking at I just want to do one application, we would recommend doing a VT application if you get the capability. But with this type of machine, we do have fungicide opportunities in corn. But really, it's about the nitrogen application. Lee, you want to talk a little bit about what you've done from an engineering standpoint?
Sure, yeah. Lucas is down here. He's going to grab one of the drops just to demonstrate the breakaway. But what we have is a pretty basic sprayer mount package that goes on with your sprayer, unique to the different sprayers. On down, you see the breakaway. This is a breaking away. Jim called it a door knocker. There's a pretty heavy-duty magnet locked in there. Gravity of the weight of the drop swings it back into position when it does break away. On down on the riser, we call the drop tube the riser. It's got a steel cable, 5/8 inch steel cable, crimped into two pieces of steel tube. And around that is a compression spring. The spring offers the stiffness that you need. It allows it to swing a little bit side to side and fore out, but also keeps it stiff enough so it's not going to be swinging everywhere. I want to jump down to the wide drop base actually. We added a hood that goes up a little bit higher than what it did last year, but just below the hood is a quick disconnect pin. You can pull that drop off real quick. If you want to slide your undercover down, you can do that, no problem. A little bit more on the base, the arms are adjustable to whatever row size you've got, anywhere from 15 to 38 inches. You heard Greg talk about upsizing his frame rows. That's going to allow him to put the different width of drops on each one of those rows. So another feature there on the wide drop.
Any questions on wide drop? So the vast majority of the systems that we sell go on standard machines like this Case or a Deere. So I've got a Deere 4730. And typically we can get through V13 corn, and that was in 20-inch rows with a 26-inch tram line. The thing that I love about the sprayer is, I've told people this probably too much, but I feel like it takes it from a depreciable asset to the biggest revenue generator on my farm. So not only can I get more efficient with my nitrogen and drive more yield, if I want custom application and some service income, the demand is out there. So we'll show you a Hedges here in just a few minutes, but we didn't even advertise it, and the phone just rings off the hook with people wanting custom application of both the nitrogen and the fungicide component. Any questions at all? Okay, I'll kind of lay out.
We have a question down here, Jim.
Yes, sir.
How wide can you go with the wide drop? You can go. We basically tell people you can put it on the first fold, about of the wide. So your boom is 72 foot wide. You can go out to 80 feet. If your boom is 55-inch wide or 55 foot wide, like this Case 120 foot boom, you go out to 60 foot. There are some sprayers that a little bit lighter weight boom that we only recommend out to 40 foot, but those are few and far between.
Okay, so what we're going to see here is another opportunity to get more efficiency out of a piece of equipment. So this was actually grower demand driven. Last year we did this just to showcase the possibility, and it was crazy because farmers would run a couple hundred feet into the field after this. So what we're doing is we're eliminating a lot of maintenance headaches with a side dress 28 bar. We're getting the benefit of the placement. So you can see here look at that placement. I mean, it's right next to the row. That is that chaining effect that I talk about. Last year we were running in V10 corn with this. Now I'm not going to tell you can run in V10 corn, but what I am going to say is I believe you're going to get 1 to 2 leaf stages more window of application opportunity. And then another really cool opportunity is if you look 3 rows in, or in the third drop, we drop the base off and we put an undercover on. So what we're doing, we will be mimicking that early V5 to V8 application, and it's just tremendous coverage within that crop. The way I look at it is, can I come in, do my nitrogen application, and about the time I get done with that, I'll just drop those base units off, put an undercover system on, and now I've got a 28 bar that's a fungicide application tool in soybeans. So that's right about the right stage, and to go into R2 soybeans, that machine's going to be a beast in there, R2 to R4. The same thing with the standard wide drop on the case or the deer. About the time we get done with our application of nitrogen on corn, that's right about when your soybeans are ready to go for fungicide application. So I can continue to get more efficiency and drive more income out of the sprayer. That's why I call it the biggest revenue generator I have on my farm. One thing that Stephanie mentioned to me, if you look down this aisleway, you see these dark green streaks? So that is sub-drip irrigation. It's on 60-inch centers, and Greg is feeding nitrogen in these zones. So how's that nitrogen moving? It's moving vertical, right? That's what you're seeing right there. Any questions on the side dress applicator?
There was a question about how many gallons an acre that he's applying right now. Did we bump that up, or is it still at 17?
From the looks of it, I'd say he's a little bit above 17.
Sounds like Lucas said 30.
Yeah. Typically on my side dress program, I'm planning on coming in with 20 to 30 based off what the nitrate levels tell me. So if mineralization's been kind, I'm going to back it off. If the environment's been challenging, I may increase it. Another question we get is, okay, does it fold or do I have to get out? It folds really nicely, so the operator never has to get out of the cab. And there you can see the first row after the fold, the undercover on there. This is also equipped with breakaways, very much the same that Lee was talking about. All right. So the question is ammonium going to be a component of soil scan at some point? And we actually have the lead engineer on here, so I'll let him answer, because if I answer it, yes.
We're working on pretty much every sensor you can think of. The next one, and not for sale this year, but potassium is the one that's farthest along that you'll see. The ammonium we are working on and having some good success. However, the prep to the soil is more challenging, so it likely won't fit in the existing soil scan is where we're at today.
But some cool progress. The other thing I like about potassium is that's a great, wide drop is a great solution. So it's not about what's available in the soil test, it's what's plant available, whether it's nitrate or potassium. And we all know that you can have really high soil fertility around potassium. That doesn't mean it's available to that root system, especially if we get into dry conditions. So we could use wide drop as a delivery mechanism for potassium. So some of the things that we're trying out, whenever I do a nitrogen application, even at VT, we typically are going to put ammonium thiosulfate with it, because if you look at those uptake curves, they're very similar. We've done work with potassium thiosulfate and other products as well. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that we've had the opportunity to run this machine on our farm this year. So this machine is basically two sprayers on one chassis. It's got dual application possibilities. And what you're going to see is he's mimicking a fungicide application as well as a nutrient application. He's getting a little more swing here because he's running slow. We usually run at least 9 miles an hour out here. But what we're really trying to do is let you guys see what we're doing. So I'm going to put that undercover right at about ear leaf or maybe a leaf above it, because the way that nozzle configuration is put together, I've got about 130 degrees of spray pattern coming out. So I'm getting below the ear leaf with the coverage. Then in the center nozzle, I'm pushing up. So I'm throwing the particles up into the top part of the canopy. And then the last thing you can see, if you look closely, we're also spraying from the top of the boom down. So I'm using a 4 nozzle configuration. We're running 17 gallons per acre here. I think I mentioned earlier that our agronomists are going to recommend 15 to 20. I'm actually getting by on 12. So we went over with this sprayer about 9,000 acres with wide drop, undercover, and a combination of dual application. I think we did 2,200 dual application, and then the rest was split with fungicide application, about half in corn and about half in soybeans. So the machine, where is the majority of the machines we sell are standard clearance sprayer. If you've got a high clearance sprayer, it just gives you another window to go do some stuff. And what he's doing is he's trying to feather back and forth so you all get to see what's going on there. So the question is, how many acres can we cover in a day? If we're doing dual application, where you have to fill up 2 tanks, it's about 400 to 450. If we're just doing a nitrogen application, it's going to be on that 450 plus. And when we're doing fungicide only, we can get easily 600 acres, which is a great segue question for what we're getting ready to go look at. Any question on dual application? This is something that I believe is conceptual right now. I think 2-3 years from now, it's not going to be a concept anymore. I think it's going to be fairly widely used. I think there's so much opportunity to take yield to the next level with that type of approach. Okay, so we're moving now to what I think is one of the most exciting products that you're going to get to see today. From a nitrogen application standpoint, we're very efficient. We can get over a lot of acres. We're at least comparable to probably more efficient than most other in-season application systems. But when it comes to fungicide application versus a sprayer with a 120-foot boom, guys say, you know what, I don't want to go 60 or 80 when I've got 120-foot sticks out here that I can go do application. So we went to Lee and his team and said, hey, what we need is full boom, undercover, and we need it to be built in a way that the driver doesn't have to get out of the cab. And this is the solution that they've delivered.
Yeah, it's a lighter weight version of the undercover than what the traditional undercover is. You'll see on this particular setup, we got the traditional undercover in the center section, the center 60 feet or 70 feet. Now on the outside, the secondary and tertiary booms, we've got this new lightweight undercover. The product is delivered down aluminum tubes that are specially designed for stiffness because you are going to be going. We're testing this through twin row 20-inch beans through 15-inch beans, so we're trying to give it as much of a good test as possible. So the risers deliver the product down to the newly designed manifold and shield. We designed the shield so that it would cut through 15-inch beans pretty aerodynamically. The manifold is a couple updates. It's going from aluminum to plastic on the outside. We're trying to get this as lightweight as possible. So every little bit of weight reduction helps. So on the outside, it'll be plastic manifold. We did add a port out the bottom as well. Pretty much everything else has remained the same. It does, as Aaron will show when we get to the end of the run here, it'll fold up horizontally so that you can fold the entire boom without having to get out the cab like Jim mentioned. Also, there's a breakaway incorporated into the hinge mechanism up at the top of the boom. We'll run out and grab that here in a second and show you what that looks like. It's really the ins and outs of the design right now. As it stands now, there are some more updates to make, but this is as far along as we had to cut and run for the show. So, more iteration. As Jim talked, we're always out there testing, trying to make sure that each design that we're coming up with is going to live in the application and really deliver what you guys are needing.
So what we have asked Aaron to do is kind of move this boom up and down different heights to demonstrate different applications. So if we're doing maybe a nutrient fungicide application, we're probably going to want to be in that top third of the canopy. That's about where he's at right now. So you can see we're getting bottom and top leaf, and we're also getting the top of the canopy covered. if we're coming into a soybean aphid or white mold, we're going to drop that down into the canopy deeper. But the key is configure the nozzles and then run them at the height that's going to give us the best coverage for the pest or the nutrient deficiency that we're looking after. We will run, right now he's running the same nozzle configuration that we were running on the Hedges. So it's 2 on the side painting. So the way that that's engineered, I call it an icebreaker. It parts that canopy open and it allows us to paint the inside of the canopy and then push up into the top if it's a fungicide. If it's an insecticide, I'm probably going to take that top nozzle and plug it and put a nozzle down into that center, and I'm going to push out into the canopy and get coverage that way. So we've just got a lot of mechanisms and a lot of opportunity around our control here. One question we get a lot is, okay, this is 30-inch rows. What about 15-inch rows or drilled rows? I know that in Northern Illinois last year, we were running this, a 30-inch space system in drilled soybeans for white mold and getting very favorable response. I've ran them in 20-inch rows on 20-inch centers. I don't have any problem getting through. These beans are probably a little big. They're R5 at least. So, I mean, they're beyond what you'd probably be doing a typical application. That R2 to R4, with the phenotypes and the soybeans we have today, you're not really going to have much of a tangling issue. I've also talked to some people today that were running 15-inch rows. They spray across the row, and they were doing the application of undercover across the row with the 30-inch and getting very good coverage in the 15-inch row soybeans. Stephanie, have you had much experience with 15-inch row? Okay.
15-inch, you're just down in that canopy. You know, the question becomes, on a 15-inch, whether you go every row or every other row. Pretty good coverage going every other row. Just make sure you have a higher rate, running all your nozzles higher. You know, we get really good coverage down in that canopy.
So that'd be a spot where we definitely want to start pushing more towards the 20 GPA versus the lower end of the GPA. Okay. So it's all about efficiency, right? If I'm going to get over acres, I can't have the driver getting out of the cab. So we tasked the lead with that. Here you can see, just with pneumatics, we're able to flip that around. And now I'm able to go out and do an application of herbicide if I want. The middle section is actually a wide drop section. So when we go with a wide drop section, it's also an undercover application system. We simply drop the wide drop base off, and if I'm going to go out and do herbicide, I just, with a quick flip, I can take that whole system off in about 15 minutes by myself. The cool thing is with the Undercover 120 solution, we can cover your whole boom, and we can do it across the entire boom. So you can fold it up, never take it off, do herbicide applications, fungicide applications, and really maintain 100% efficiency. So it's a really, really good approach. All right, last run of the day. It's been a warm day. We certainly appreciate all of you taking the time to come out and join us here. Hopefully you gained some value from all the different demonstrations that we did. Hopefully you picked up a couple nuggets from an educational standpoint.